Unboxing video today. I've got the Anycubic Mono 2K resolution resin printer to unbox. As you might have seen on my social media, I have got the Anycubic Mono X already, which I've been using to print. As you'll see here, I've been using the Mono X, which is the big boy resin printer. Been using it to print these human decorative skulls, and they've been coming out beautiful. Had a couple of fails at the very beginning, but last few I added a few extra supports, and they've been coming out no problems. So they've been coming out really nice, and this was in water washable resin. That was on the Anycubic Mono X, and then I've been printing these little animal skulls. These have been printing on the original Elegoo Mars. So they're also in 2 parts, and you can see the detail in there. These have been coming out beautiful. So I've been printing these out, and I've been making some bases that these will be up. These are going to be up for sale on my shop, which they'll be added shortly. So I also wanted to test out how small you could go with skulls with a resin printer. So we've got this little bird skull, which, as you can see, is pretty tiny. But we went smaller than that again. Very small. You can barely see it. A little tiny human skull. I'll try and get the detail in there. Don't mind my crazy cat running about. So that is an absolutely tiny, and it came out perfect. That was on the Elegoo Mars. So I've now got this Anycubic Mono, which I'm going to use to reference it against the Elegoo Mars. So let's get this box open. No better way to open it than with a skull knife. Let's have a look inside the box, see what we've got. It's not a massive box, but I suppose it's not a massive printer. So we've got the protective bag in there. Piece of cardboard on the top. It's a simple picture instruction manual, quite like a quick start guide. And a piece of paper that you can use to level the head of the printer, level the plate, the build plate. And we've got our box of parts. So inside the box we've got power adapter, some resin filters to filter the bits out of the resin when you empty the vat, some gloves which you're definitely going to want. Do not want to be touching that resin, it is not good. Then we've got the plastic scraper, which you can use to clean the bottom of the resin vat. If you've had a failure or there's any cured resin in the bottom, you can get it off the film using that without damaging it. Got a more heavy duty scraper with a sort of sharper edge on it. You can use that for getting the supports off your models. And then also inside here we've got a mask to put on, and a few Allen keys and a warranty card for the printer itself. So pretty much everything we need there. Now it's got a nice big chunk of protective foam on the top of it there, and there it is, I can see it. Just need to try and get this thing out. I think we'll take it out, take the lid out by itself first. So that is the protective lid. plenty of foam in there, a lot of packaging. We've even got the actual lids completely full up with protective packaging, and I can feel something else in there, so I'm gonna guess that's probably the build plate. We'll have a look at that in a second. No damage to the lid, so exactly the same as the Mono X lid, the orangey colour with the Anycubic logo on it. And yeah, so in the bottom of this packaging that was inside, let's bring that in the bottom of this box, we have got, there's our build plate. It's tiny, looks tiny after having the Mono X. That looks so small. The Mono X is probably, it's like three times the size of that. That is such a, but it's perfect for doing little prints, and being the mono, it should be quick. There's our vat. Plastic vat, it's not a metal one, it is a plastic one. Do still need to get some spare vats, because I do like to keep the different resins in different vats if possible, rather than keep emptying it. So there's a lot of packaging there, and now we get down to the bottom, which is the printer itself. So this is the last bit. Nothing else in there, nope. So there we are, that's the, get the printer out. Here's the printer itself. It's a black plastic base. You've got the one linear rail there on the Z-axis. It's got some grease on there. Protective film over the screen, protective film over the touch screen on the front. It's not too heavy, it's very light. Feels good build quality, good structure. All of the Z-axis is decent. Plastic's a bit, well, it's plastic. What more do you want from plastic? It's never going to be. Let's get rid of all of this packaging. So, here we go. Here's our printer. Here's our build plate to go on it. And then what I'm going to, once we've got it going, I'm also going to do another test today, which is we're going to try this Eco UV resin, from Anycubic. This is supposed to be a lot more environmentally friendly. I've never tried this one before, so I got it in white, because obviously I've been doing a lot of skulls. Wasn't the cheapest. Whether it will come down in price once more people start to use it, it's possible. I think I paid, it was off Amazon, I believe it was up in near, I think it might have been £26 I think for this 500 gram bottle, so a lot more expensive than most of the other resins I normally buy. But I wanted to give it a go. I like to try each resin. I'm glad I tried the water washable, because so far the water washable resin is my favourite. So we're going to give that one a go today. We're going to probably put a skull on here and give a skull a try. So let's get this thing connected up. So we'll turn it on. Already connected it up to the power. Then we've got this protective film we can pull off of the build plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that. It's going to need loosening off, so I can level it. We've got our piece of leveling paper, so I'll just stick that like that there. Then if we loosen off these 4 screws or bolts, whatever you want to call them. It's quite a lot for such a small build plate. The Elegoo Mars just has one on the front, one on the side. This is the same build plate structure as the Mono X, the bigger version. So if we then push home, it's going to bring it down. Should stop there. There it goes. apply some gentle pressure. I like to apply it front and back. Bit of gentle pressure front and back, and what I'll do is I'll nip all of these bolts up. I'll just nip them up quite loose. Like so, keeping some pressure on. I'll now nip them up tight. Like that. I wouldn't say these were the easiest. Would have been easier with thumb screws. It's not so bad on the Mono X because it's a big printer and they're bigger bolts. Right, so now we're there, wherever we want to be. You can click. We've done that, so we've homed it. Set Z0, enter. And now it's going to rise. The cat wants in on the video, of course. The cat is trying to see what she's after. She's after the Allen keys, because watch this. She loves Allen keys. She'll pinch that, pick it up in her mouth, run off with it. You can have a bit of paper if you want. I know you want to chew that to pieces as well. Right. So that is the plate level. Then we've got our vat. Give that a little clean off. What do you think? You like it? You like this new printer? Let's get that in there. What did you want to get in the video? Is that it? Nothing. Yeah, the Allen keys. Right. Push that in all the way to the back. There's two little bolts just coming up from the back that keep it in place. Well, for it to push up against. Then we've got that's in place. This is going to be the resin, obviously, the eco resin that we're going to try. I'm not going to print the test piece. Obviously, a lot of people just print the test piece. I have no use for a test piece, so I'm not going to print it. I am going to print a skull and Chitubox Beta 1.8 now has support for the Mono and the Mono X, whereas before you had to use the Anycubic software. Now you don't. So we're going to try using the Chitubox 1.8 as well. Maybe the cat will get involved, who knows. So we've got our USB dongle. We'll put a skull design on there. The cat will take the Allen key, run off with it, like so. Right, let's go to the computer and let's do the skull part. So I've now moved the Mono over next to his big brother, the Mono X. First print I done actually was a failure. The first print failed, and a couple of reasons, I believe. One, I didn't clean the build plate off after peeling off the initial protective film. Should really have given that a clean off with some isopropyl alcohol. I didn't. I have actually now very lightly scuffed up the build plate with some, I think it's about 2000 grit sandpaper, just very lightly. And the other reason I believe it failed, this is my fault, is I've been using the same resin now. I generally have been using a lot of these standard Anycubic UV resins. I've been using these for quite a while, and when you get your bottle of resin, which I often don't always check, since very small writing on this one, it gives you the recommended, obviously, just like PLA gives you the recommended temperatures, the resin gives you the recommended exposure times for the bottom layer or bottom layers, and then each significant layer after that. So I didn't check on the bottle of the eco resin, generally because it was still by Anycubic. So I foolishly expected it to be the same, whereas it's not the same. The exposure times for this eco resin is quite a lot higher. We've got 20 to 80 seconds for the first layer, 3 to 15 seconds for every other layer. So when we go back to the bottles for this other one, the other one's saying, which was it? Water washable is actually what I've been using, and the water washable is saying the bottom exposure time 30 seconds, normal exposure 6.5 to 7 seconds. Well, that's we're going all the way up to 80 and all the way up to 15. So on my second print, what I actually done was I changed the bottom exposure time. I didn't go all the way to the top, went sort of mid limit. I think I brought it up to 60 seconds for the first layer, and then each additional layer I went about mid limit again. I went up to about, I think it was 12 seconds. So it did add quite a lot of significant time on the 3D print, but it has not failed this time. It looks like it's come out perfect. So that's just something to be aware of. Make sure you do check the bottles if you're changing between resins, because some of them do have different exposure times on. The other thing with these two Anycubic resin printers is, unlike the Elegoo, if you take the lid off of the Anycubic while it's running, it does have a sensor which detects that the lid's on. And if you take it off, it will stop printing. So you do need to make sure you pause it and then top up your resin, which I did have to do. So that's gone fine. And then my comment originally about these leveling screws for the build plate, having 4 of them, as compared to say the Elegoo, which has got 2, I have actually gone back on my opinion on that, because coming from an engineering background, now that I've got this build plate leveled out with the 4 screws, the way it mounts on here, and then you just have the top fixture pushing down on it, because it's such a nice fit and it's pushing down on a flat plate. I do believe once you've got it level, you could probably, I'd be quite happy to just stick that build plate straight back on for a good, I don't know, 3 to 5 prints. If there's no issues, I wouldn't worry about re-leveling it. Whereas the way the build plate on my Elegoo works, with the thumb screw at the top, but it doesn't sit on a flat level like that. There's room for movement, and I feel like I don't feel happy running that one without leveling it every single time. So I do think, actually, although it's a bit more awkward when you first level the build plate, I do feel that you could probably now just leave that, and unless you start getting a problem, I wouldn't expect you to have to re-level it. So what I'm going to do now is, that's all finished, it's nice and white. I'm going to pause the video, and then I will take this off the build plate, take off the supports, and we'll stick it in a curing machine. So here we have the print before it goes into the curing station. It has been washed off in my container of isopropyl alcohol. The supports were a lot harder to remove than usual. I'm not necessarily going to put that down to the different resin. Generally, I like to, just the same with obviously FDM prints, like to remove the supports as close to it finishing printing as possible. But because I had to up the layer times, up the exposure times, that did actually add around, must have been around an extra 3 hours to the print. The way this ended up taking about 10.5 hours to print. So one downside of that resin there, the eco one at the moment, is I'd need to play with it and see if I can get the exposure times down. But by putting the exposure times up to mid limit, which is still higher than the standard resins, you're increasing the print time by quite a substantial amount. There is still supports in there, as you can see, but these are, there's quite a lot in there, you can see. They're very difficult to get out, and generally I think I'd so I don't break this, I'm going to cure it first, and then I will try and get them out when it's a bit stronger from curing. So we'll add this into the curing station now. The curing station as well, because it's all of Anycubic devices seem to be, the lid needs to be on, of course, before you can use it. So we will add the lid and then we will start curing it. So lid's on. We're currently in cure mode, so that's good. Then we'll choose the time. I'm going to do it in 2 blasts of 2 minutes. So I'm going to give it 2 minutes this way up, and I'm going to flip it over, give it 2 minutes on its top, just to try and make sure everything underneath is cured. So we're going to give it that. It's definitely, prints come out nice though. I'm really happy with the quality. There's no actual imperfections in it. It's come out decent. As for would I buy this resin again, I suppose that's the important question. Would I buy the Eco Resin again? Currently, no. Currently, my reasons for that is the price is very high. I'd say the price of a bottle of Eco Resin, I paid about 50% extra for that bottle compared to what I would normally pay for a standard bottle of resin. So you're talking a significant price increase, while you're also looking at the moment, certainly longer print times because of the Eco Resin. So unless the price starts to come down, unfortunately price is always a major factor in my choosing of resins and printers even. I wouldn't probably buy it again at the moment until the price comes down. My favourite still currently is actually this Nova 3D washable resin. I'm really liking this one. It's I like this. It's not so harsh as the other resins. I will say the Eco Resin, it doesn't smell. It doesn't quite have the same smell to it as the standards Anycubic or Elegoo resins. It is a bit, does have a bit less fragrance or smell to it, so it is good from that point of view. This washable resin's the same though, and significantly cheaper than the Anycubic Eco. So let's flip that over and we'll do 2 more minutes. So I'm going to do 2 more minutes just like that on its face, just so that it makes sure I get underneath of it to cure everything underneath. That was already quite solid just then when I just checked it, but I'll leave that going and then we'll just talk about the printer in a minute. So down to the actual Anycubic mono printer itself, would I recommend this printer? And yes, I would. I paid off Amazon with a voucher. It's around the sort of £260 mark. That's about how much I paid for it. And then obviously next to it we've got his big brother, the Mono X. Now my opinion, honest opinion, is if you can afford the Mono X and you want to offer yourself the option of later adding larger prints, I think if you can afford the Mono X, I'd go with the Mono X. It's they're very similar in features and print quality. The Mono X has a few extra features, but it also, the build volume is so much larger on the Mono X that if you can afford to buy it, then that's the one I'd go with. But we are talking almost double the price. So if you only want to do miniatures parts and you want to stick to a tighter budget, then I would certainly recommend the Mono. It's a good printer. It's pretty fast still, and also the other issue you have with the Mono X is because you're a much bigger printer, much larger vat, you need to be buying in larger quantities of resin, because it takes almost one full 500, well no, that takes over one full 500 milliliter bottle to fill the vat on the Mono X, whereas you can stick to a 500 ml bottle, do you just fine on the smaller printer. So there's that finished. Let's get that out. So here it is. It's now cured. It's nice and
nice and solid. One nice thing is it hasn't discoloured at all. It's still perfectly white. There's been no discoloration from the curing process. I have had that with some of the clear resin. Possibly I cured it too long. This just had 2 minutes twice, so I had 4 minutes, and there's no discoloration to the white. It's now nice and pure white. It's a lovely print. I will have to get in there and try and pop out some of these supports that are all left in there, but I'm really happy with that. That's come out really nice. So the eco resin comes out nice, print's nice. For me, it's just down to the price mainly at the moment. Unless that price comes down, and I can do a few more prints, play with the settings, see if I can get it to the exposure times to be a bit lower, then at the moment my favourite is still going to be the Novo 3D water washable. But it also, like I say, comes down to price. As you can see, I've got plenty of other bottles of Anycubic back there, and it just comes down to often what's on offer at the time. So I hope you enjoyed this little insight into the Anycubic Mono, and whether it gives you some idea in what printer to choose and what resins to use. So thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.